And now we're going to welcome up co-founder of Stand Up Republic, Mindy Finn.
Thank you. I want to thank CDT and CKI and Newseum Institute and maybe other acronyms I'm forgetting for having me here today. It's such a pleasure to speak to all of you. I will say that I did pick up on the guidance that we should think about the future and what the future of speech online will look like, but not so much on the guidance that we were supposed to be inspirational. The assumption might have been that I would come with a sunny disposition on those topics, because I've long been an advocate and a champion for the internet and the internet as a facilitator of expanding the expression and the voices that are part of our conversation and our politics. But let me tell you a little bit of story about my journey. So I first discovered personally the power of the internet for shifting the balance of political power around 2001, 2002. It may have been sooner, but those are the years that I was kind of ending college, starting my career, and I knew I wanted to go into public service. I thought maybe journalism. And as a journalism student, the first day on a job covering, writing for a paper was September 11th. And I was also moonlighting as an intern at Congressional Quarterly, which then many of you in the room may not even know what that is anymore, but it was a highly esteemed journal that provided deep coverage of Capitol Hill lawmaking and other political topics. I was leaning away from pursuing a career in journalism because everyone kept telling me that there was a specific journey you had to take, and no matter what, you could not express an opinion. You had to be objective. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous, because I do have an opinion and I want to express it. And no one at the time seemed to guide me. Unfortunately, I was just like a couple years too soon that I could actually pursue a career where I would be able to have an opinion and speak out, even online. But anyway, in this Congressional Quarterly internship, one of the great things is that I was basically a one-person new media department, and I was told I could pretty much pitch and write anything I wanted, because nobody at the Bureau really cared what was posted online. This was a dream for a 20-year-old. I ended up diving into the true impact of the Patriot Act, the arguments for and against a fixed 435-person House of Representatives, and even the specific triggers for flying the flag at half-staff at federal buildings. And guess what? People actually read these things. They cared, my work mattered, and my bosses remained oblivious. So the next year, when I went inside the belly of the legislative beast, I worked for a member of Congress. One of my tasks was to oversee our website and e-newsletters. And I'll always remember the time when it hit me. I also handled all of the mail in the office. So it's Capitol Hill office, you manage many jobs. And it really occurred to me at one point while redoing this site that we could better answer about 80% of the questions that came in if we just posted this information online, that many of these were duplicative. And that would make my job a lot easier, and it would serve our constituents better, aha. And that if we went beyond that our online platforms could be redesigned to create a direct channel to the people. This would be very empowering for them. They might actually start to like Congress. And so later, when I led digital for a presidential campaign, I saw the power of organizing tens of thousands of people to host events on the same night across the country. This was 2004, the breakout year for political blogging, and on and on. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because initially, I really bought into this utopian idea of the internet for good only, sure to solve the world's problems. And in my particular area of politics, what I saw was that it was only Luddites who were fearing this brave new world of unfiltered, unfettered speech, that we were the new guard on the cusp of a revolution with people-powered politics that would flatten the playing field. All voices would be equal, no gatekeepers, from the blogger in the basement to the real estate tycoon on Fifth Avenue. But idealism is a funny thing. So around 2009, the topics for the forums I participated in started to shift from how do we best use this awesome opportunity afforded to us on the internet to elevate our voices and empower others. But is this not that's the topic, that's the conversation that we were having, and then it shifted to, is social media ruining politics? This is a conversation many have today. This was about 8 years ago, some people starting to have this conversation. I think, as you know about this timing, this is when the platform started to really take over. And I know there's been a lot of discussion here today on that, so I'm not going to go into that in great detail. But the other thing that happened is that as the majority of the American public actually started to engage online, the early adopters didn't like what they saw. As social media platforms and their mobile apps started to monopolize our online lives, the danger of these platforms came into focus. People seemed to forget when they had this utopian view of the internet that as long as something is used by humans, that inherently there will be tension and perhaps hate speech and violence and all the bad things that have happened through the course of human history among humans when they get together in the same space. So I still bet on human nature and its ability to tackle new and unprecedented problems. And let's have little doubt that as long as humans are involved, and we're not all just robots, that we'll be overcome the challenges of today. But I do see more clearly than ever that the internet has serious destructive potential. And adding artificial intelligence to the mix is only going to enhance that potential, that we can't take this space for free expression for granted, or the idea that it's not only going to do good, but it's mainly going to do good. And the worst part about this, and this is something that I focused on a lot more since the last election, is that this only really affects this effect is greater in free and open societies. Russia and China certainly aren't feeling anything from this wave of populism and all the ugliness that comes with it that's sweeping democracies around the world. Their censorship laws and authoritarian systems eliminate the possibility that like-minded individuals dissatisfied with the status quo will be able to find one another and organize to the same extent their counterparts in democratic societies can and do. Now, representative government certainly requires robust public discourse and the free exchange of ideas. The problem is that we're now sharing this public space with everyone else on the internet around the world. The public square encompasses the nation, and because we are free, and the internet encompasses the world, we face the threats that we face today. We only recently saw that foreign interference in our democratic process was enthusiastically embraced by many participants in that process, something that would have been inconceivable in a pre-internet era. Filling up our information space with anger and divisive rhetoric has proven to be a useful political tool for demagogic politicians and foreign adversaries alike. Adding in the constant threat of bots and AI is only going to add to the chaos and make it more difficult for the average person to operate independently in any online environment. And even here domestically, all of this great potential that I was so idealistic about a little over a decade ago to empower an unprecedented number of people and engage them in the process has instead is more often used and seen for its power to exploit and manipulate, at least in a political context. So where's the inspiration in all of this? I do think our options are limited because we're at a natural disadvantage against authoritarian governments, as I mentioned. And some of that we're just going to have to live with, although perhaps it can be a point of pride if we're able to figure out how to communicate with one another and regain a sense of national cohesion, even in the face of these efforts to divide us. Digital literacy is lacking. I've long thought about the internet as this wild, wild west. It was this free space, and the first people that came, settled up put an outpost here or an outpost there. There was very little rules of engagement, and that was incredibly exciting and advantageous for the people who were first movers. And then you start to have the institutions that come in to control. Well, if you think about it in terms of, for example, how the country was founded or any society, the institutions and the rules that have to go into place so that it's a safe place for us to operate may need to come into place here. I don't think we can fully resist that. As much as people lament at times that rules coming into place like seat belts, or as a mother of two, the requirement of car seats. And I think back to a time when people could just freely throw their kids in the back seat and take off, and how easy that would be for travel and everything else. Most of us don't want to go back to the era of the Wild Wild West. Most of us don't want to go back to the 1950s. And even for those who maybe say they do, when you challenge about what that actually means, they change their mind. Global internet governance is really the wild card. Many countries already severely limit and prosecute speech on the internet. The transition of ICANN to an international group worries some people about the possibility of yielding governance to governments who are hostile to speech. These are all issues that I'm sure you've been talking about today. And this global governance can be important. It is very important. It has an impact on the free speech of 80% of users, the great majority of whom will never learn how to use a VPN, particularly because they don't have to do so many things on their own anymore. But the remaining people who are tech savvy, who are simply looking for ways around regulation, will almost certainly create their own avenues for free speech protections. The internet is not only danger. I see a lot of good as well, and is the same way that it's being manipulated and exploited and causing some of the challenges we face today in our politics. I see expression and collaboration as the answer and our only way out. And without this technology, we would not be able to get there. It's the same way that the business incentives feed hyperpartisanship and extremism. They are also bringing movements together in the center to strengthen the center and fight back. I think about examples like, in the wake of the travel ban, and no matter what people think about that policy, people quickly being able to mobilize and organize to airports at the blink of an eye. I'm from Houston, and watching that community come together in the wake of the hurricane starts to feed some of that idealism, that optimism that I once had. Same way the truth is being eroded. I've been talking about as an assault on truth. Being able to access fact and truth is only accessible because of the freedom of the internet. People organizing to stand up for the infringement on basic rights, and also the need for new leaders and movements that will continue to bring up candidates who represent communities that have often been underrepresented. All of these things can only happen if we continue to protect the internet as a place for free speech and expression. So again, sure, I'm not that sunny idealist about the power and potential of technology to empower the world that I once was. But on balance, and as long as it's humans that still run the internet, and humans have an intrinsic desire for freedom, liberty, and having a voice, I remain optimistic about our future. Thank you.